Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the podcast Echo. If you've not been with us already, well, where have you been? But don't worry, we've got a great hour of conversation lined up, all about what you hear from a podcast when you hear it. It's not about what was said, it's about what you heard. So what we do on the show is we take a podcast of our choice or even someone else's suggestion and literally talk about what we heard from it and exchange with another person what we heard from it. So I've got my great partner with me on this, Ange, and this week we're going to be talking about an episode from a series called The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett, where he interviews a wide-ranging number of celebrities and people, and the conversation takes a reign of its own. It's rarely a rigid question and answer style session. It very much goes off on tangents, and as such, they make for longer episodes than your typical podcast. So this week's episode, we'll be talking about the one where he had Jimmy Carr on as a guest. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jimmy Carr is a stand-up comedian in the UK, and he's known for his one-line delivery style stand-up, but he also goes into those very, what some might say, controversial topics in areas with no abandon. You know, he hardly cares. Not unwittingly, but it's part of the comedic effect. But he goes where a lot don't go. But what really struck me about this podcast was that a lot of it was about his book that he wrote about the world of self-development and self-help.
Yeah.
He framed it as like the comedian self-help book or something of that line. And it was a very wide-ranging, in-depth talk, I felt, which even from just hearing it again, rather than sitting through it, I found myself just like key phrases just popped out here and there all the time, whether it was a quote or whether it was a line. And the first one that came across for me was at the very beginning when he just said the words, "We're unreliable narrators."
I've got that noted down. I wanted to talk about that as well. And you know
There
me,
you
I
go.
don't. You know me, I don't normally make notes.
Yeah, this is not a magic trick. This is not like a rehearsed
No.
moment.
You know I don't normally make notes because I've normally like taken away a certain amount from it. But there were a couple of things that I really wanted to remember because I really liked how he phrased it, and that was one of them.
I mean, for those of you listening on audio, by the way, this is when I said unreliable narrators, Ange just put to the screen a little post-it note where she'd written the words unreliable narrators. As I say, not pre-rehearsed, not a magic trick, but this is the point, right? We both seem to have heard the same thing.
Well, I think it's important to point out this was your choice this week.
Yes. So it's something, you know, so the previous episode I took from the series was Dr. Steve Peters. And, you know, on YouTube, they always have, like, you know, if you like this, check these out, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the Jimmy Carr one I clicked on and thinking, okay, I like Jimmy Carr. You know, I've seen a couple of his shows. And, okay, let's see what this one is all about. I enjoyed the Steve Peters one. I thought this might be something different. But as I say, when he talked very eloquently about, you know, the areas of, like, self-help and his own past and stuff like that, it was very rarely to do with comedy. There's some comedy elements in there.
Yeah,
but I like that it was an overall thing.
He almost seemed not offended. That's not the right word. But there's one point where Stephen Bartlett interjects like a little joke at the end of one of the things that he said, and Jimmy Carr kind of goes, "Oh yeah, actually that's quite funny. All right, you got me there," kind of thing. But he almost seems not offended, but like affronted that actually I don't want to joke right now. I'm talking about something quite serious. And it's almost like a completely different side to him that really surprised me because I think I've seen Jimmy Carr live. I've seen him a couple of times. And I've obviously seen him on 8 out of 9 Cats Does Countdown. And what was the other one that he used to be on? Was he on Have I Got News For You?
No, isn't that the big fat quiz of the year or something like that?
He's been in, I mean, obviously, great, you know, he's been on the TV screens now for a good couple of decades, but I've never seen quite this serious side of him before, and it really surprised me. A lot of what he said really resonated quite a lot with me. But that unrealistic narrator thing, I think it's something that I've always stood by. Anyway, it's something that I've always said. You know, my memories of childhood, I'm sure by now, when I'm in my late 40s, are incredibly different to probably what really happened. It's like Chinese whispers in your own self.
That's right.
But yeah, I really liked that A lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. It really.
I think it's one of those phrases to me that, like, when you hear it, you're like, actually, that's readily applicable to me. It's not like one you have to really think about. It's like, well, I don't know, because I think a lot of what we experience in the world are the stories that we tell ourselves. We often make up opinions or judgments or viewpoints or perspectives, and usually they're fixed. This is my opinion about X. This is my view about this. And rarely do we take the time to go, well, actually I can have room for flexibility in the opinion. I could change it, but then if I change my opinion, I look indecisive or following the crowd. But really, when it comes to the truth of a black and white, decision, I like to think of it more what I call scaled thinking. And then when I heard the words unreliable narrator, it is that saying, look, according to the situation, you might change the story according to the situation you're in, to either, validate yourself or to make yourself not look inferior or stupid to other people. Scenarios where, like a job interview or impressing somebody on a date. You might exaggerate a story, you might make up a story, you might embellish the story. But at the same time, the humans like stories in general. We like listening to stories, tales, that kind of thing. Or obviously comes from childhood. Many of us had bedtime stories read by whomever, and we just like the idea of, someone telling us what happened and all this kind of thing. But when we're the narrator, we actually fulfill, I think, a need for significance and ego and love and connection through that very action of narrating. We're telling the story, and also we retain the control. We get to say what happens next. We can make it up, we can twist it, we can do whatever, and that in the simple action gives us that. But the unreliability comes from, well, you might say one thing today and then tomorrow you change it for whatever reason, and I think that holds true for a lot.
I hadn't really looked at it like that. Do you think that our incessant need for storytelling and telling things, I mean, obviously anyone that says that they don't rewrite a story slightly in their benefit when they're telling it for whatever that purpose is would probably be fibbing. We all do it. It is just part of who we are. It's human nature. But do you think that relates back to childhood about having stories read, or do you think it's much more ingrained than that? Is it much?
It's a good question. I think it starts there because we experience that through our experience as a child learning about the world. So obviously we can't really make our own judgments out loud in terms of conversation when we're a young child and start to work. So much of what we receive are either rules or orders, so like do this, don't do that, you better do so we get sort of direction. But then there's also stories about what appeals to like our imagination, what our curiosity. So that in that regard, books or audio books or cartoons or whatever that depict that idea of a story, a tale, or whichever appeal, because not only does it fire our imagination, but it also gives us the idea of like a narrative. Everything's not just a straightforward question or decision, and we carry that on, I think, through our lives. Now obviously as we grow older, we tend to stem away from the storybook side of it, somebody having to read to us. We go out and find our own stories, make our own stories, and find which ones appeal to us. So that could be from, say you read an autobiography, you've read the story of somebody's life. Even podcasts now, this podcast itself talked about where Jimmy came from. He's dyslexic till he's 10 or 11, and then he made his way to Cambridge. Through the will of fuck it, if that's the thing I've got to do,
that's what I've got to do. I think that's one thing that all of these podcasts so far have got in common, is that I think like 3 out of these 5, how many have we done already? 4.
This is the fourth one.
I think 3 out of them are from very intelligent people being told at a very young age that they weren't going to amount to anything. It amazes me, honestly. It really does.
But again, I think that's more symptomatic and common in all of us than we might think. Like, I'd be surprised to find that many other people might not have had a similar journey. Maybe not been outrightly told, no, you're not good enough in those terms, but it's the small, simple actions you shared before about, how you interpreted as a child transiting between, places, being left temporarily alone in a station while you're waiting to be picked up. That has the effect of like, wait, am I not good enough to be picked up on time? Which you carried on through until you did the work on yourself and learnt those ideas and lessons for yourself. So I think everybody similarly has that situation where it's like you do questions like, wait, well, what am I doing? What am I here for? Not those, I guess, those existential theological questions, but more a case of like, well, it actually harks back to something Jimmy said later on in the episode of like, what's your edge? You know, people get stuck defining, well, what do I do? And even Stephen Bartlett asked that, like saying, well, how do people find it? And Jimmy, I really liked his answer of like, look, your edge doesn't mean you have to be better than everybody else or anyone else. It's just what's that thing where you're pretty good at, but you can keep improving on, and that's what will keep you going. And that's something I've always actually no. To finish that analogy, he also said, look, people fascinate with the idea of winning the lottery, getting a load of money. And I really liked a bit that he said, and this is my favourite bit from the show, where he said, when people say, what do they want? And they say, I want a load of money. It's like, what? You just want tokens for something you might want later on in life.
Yeah, he says you have to be specific.
Brilliantly put.
Yeah, be specific.
Exactly. Yeah, and it harks back to probably similar things that we've either talked about or you've heard before elsewhere, that when we say to ourselves, what do you want? It goes beyond that I want a big house or a partner or money, because it's like, if I get that thing, that's what will make me happy. But it's like, well, why do you want it? Is it because everybody else has got it, or you know, you're jealous that somebody else has got it, which they talked about in the episode? But I really like the way he said, every time you put in the hard work on the thing you do, which you can't really avoid, that's your lottery ticket to one day it might click through.
Might come in. It really did. I mean, it's almost, and I don't know if we've spoken about it. I think we have a little bit, but one of the things, and I don't want to go on too much about coaching, and because that's kind of not what we're really here for. But one of the things that obviously they really hammer into you, and we have had a couple of conversations about it, I think on recording and off recording as well, is this whole niching down thing. And it's almost what Jimmy is saying is find one thing, and one thing that you love, and one thing that you almost drift off when you're doing, and you forget that you're there and you're doing it, and it's just the most natural thing for you.
Flow state.
And flow state, and just absolutely, bring that into the world of what you want to do for the rest of your life. Because if you can figure that out, and I've recently done that massively. I very broadly wanted to help people and coach people. I know that's what I want to do and that's where I want to be. But after listening to more of these podcasts, and even podcasts that aren't coaching related like this one, that absolutely say, figure out what you want, pick one thing and just give it 100%, because they are your lottery tickets ultimately. And I think it's probably one of this particular podcast has made me focus a little bit harder, and you'll have noticed that I've recently honed my niche a little bit more, and I've made that decision based on probably watching this podcast. Gave me a little bit of an extra nudge, because I thought, if you're not a coach and you're not a motivational speaker, and you're not one of the people that I'm listening to a podcast for because I'm looking for direction, but you've actually, like, randomly in this podcast given me the direction I was looking for without even asking for it, then I'm going to trust the universe on this one, and I'm going to go, all right, Jimmy Carr's saying it, it's got to be true. So
brilliant. Hopefully we do the same when people listen to our podcast, right? I mean, this is the very ethos of the show. As I say, I got different things from it, Anne's got different things from it, you, the listener or the viewer, will get different things from it. That's exactly what this is all about. Something that also struck me from this podcast was the idea of when they talked about the rise of the individual versus the group. I thought that was very telling, where he talked about, look, when you watch live comedy, like at the actual arena with the group of either your friends or people, you tend to like feel the joke more and you laugh out loud, versus if you're watching it on on your phone, on the tube or whatever, you just smile to yourself and you're like, well, you're not sort of fully getting into experience. You're still enjoying it, but not as if you were,
I'm just going to quickly find a quote. Hold on.
Yeah. Whilst Andy's fine there, I'll just finish what they were saying of like
the rise sorry.
That's all right. The rise of the individual, they were saying, versus the group, is that the idea that we've never had more means to be connected to other people, yet there's a lot more feeling of alienation around. We've never been more connected and more alienated, is how they put it on the show. I thought that was a very strong way of putting it, and actually quite true again when you pause to think about it, because we do have the load of much more means nowadays to keep in contact with people and this kind of thing. But the alienation comes from, well, with that comes the whole idea that you almost got more opportunities unwittingly. You don't even have to actively go out to look for them. Of actually, your self-worth is put at ransom, owing to the connections that you can have, not with necessarily just the people but even strangers. Even later on, they talked about the Insta scrolling habit, the idea that you're getting load of messages of the people that you're not. Oh, someone's water skiing on, where did he say water skiing? Somewhere
in the Amazon.
That's it, in the Amazon. That's it. Or someone's eating watermelon in a pool. It's those things of like, yes, some of them are saying you can have this too, and yada yada. But that's one thing, is the danger of, like, we have all the means of connectivity, yet we're still holding our ransom and our self-worth to ransom with that. So the alienation comes from, like, well, shit, what am I meant to be?
I mean, doesn't he also say that you're probably almost jealous of yourself?
Yeah.
Because look, you look at how you look, and how is that real life? It just,
what they say is that you're comparing your insides to someone else's outsides.
Yeah, and that's like oranges and apples, right? It's not even close. Yeah. It's not even close. I was looking for a quote by Dave Grohl, and I can't actually find it. And it's a quote about him, the moment when you're in a stadium and you've got 25,000 people all singing your same words back at you.
Oh yeah.
For every single person that's in that stadium, it means something different. But for in that moment, you're all there together and you're singing the same words, and it's that collective of being part of something bigger that we crave a lot more. I mean, I don't know if I've talked quite very much about this, but I've spent quite a lot of time inside. I had become very, very insular. And I think lockdown played a massive part in that. I've always been the most antisocial person you'll ever meet in your life. Like, I love meeting new people. I love being around new people. But do I want to leave my house? Absolutely not, if I can avoid it. Do I want to go to the supermarket where it's really bright and full of people I don't know? No, I do not. Do you know what I mean? And I'm incredibly connected at home, and I can be incredibly connected at home. Thank goodness I am, because my mum and dad don't live locally, so I video time them every day, and I have that luxury of doing that. But I have become very aware of how much more insular I've become. The more options that are opened up to you to do everything through technology now makes the necessity for us to actually go out and socialise and be around people a lot less.
It's a very good point. Good point.
It's something that I've really conscientiously had to take proactive steps to start pushing myself back out there, because at my age, and I'm not saying that I'm old by any stretch, I'm 47 in January, but what I'm saying is that as you get older, it's very easy to settle into that flow of not wanting to go out and not wanting to leave the house, and just everything about your confidence, your body, your mind, how you dress, everything, including society, is sort of saying, well, you need to do it this way. And then almost you're being given everything you need to never have to leave the house again. And that becomes a really hard cycle to break once it's started. And it's
really well put.
It can be incredibly lonely, but equally, I don't want to go out. So I'm all right with that. Do you know what I mean?
It's really well put. And in fact, harks the two words really well of, like, you're connected, so you can have the ability to go out, connect with people or you don't know. But at the same time, if those connection opportunities give rise to the idea of, like, well, hang on, I might feel intimidated or uncomfortable, it's not my thing, then you feel more alienated, because it's like, no, I'd rather be on my own, thanks, or not go out. Indeed, let me just pull up a quote if I can. Somebody posted, we will get back to podcast in a second. But this is the point. Look, these conversations trigger all sorts of tangents, so that's all good. Here we go. So it was someone who posted on in my network a general paragraph talking about feelings of confusion, saying things like, I've got a happy personality, but I've got a sad soul. I can go from feeling incredibly confident and strong to feeling really insecure and weak. And it also says, I'm outgoing, yet I prefer to be alone. So in similar vein to the whole, look, there's much more opportunity nowadays for connection, yet alienation is still on the rise. And we all have heard of stats regarding loneliness and connection, and people feeling things like anxiety and depression from that.
Yeah.
But and again, even in the episode, again, to bring that back in, they mention, why do people go to Glastonbury? They might go for the music, but they also might go for the feeling of belonging. You're there amongst a load of people sharing that common experience. Indeed, I did find that Dave Grohl quote where he said, what you mentioned was, that's one of the great things about music. You can sing a song, basically paraphrasing what you were saying, to be honest. It's saying you can sing a song to 85,000 people and they'll sing it back for 85,000 different reasons.
Different reasons. That's it. That's the quote.
Yeah. It was absolutely true. And that's when it comes to music, I think that's one of the unifying factors of music. That this is like similar to this podcast. This podcast, actually, you'll hear a song and you'll get meaning A from it. You'll hear it and get meaning B from it, and that's the conversation.
Yeah,
what did you get from that kind of thing?
Well, this is one of the things that and I don't know if I've completely skipped us past a bit here, but talking about what you were just saying about being incredibly social, but also quite introvert and extrovert and introvert. And one of the things that Jimmy Carr said in this is sadness is very different to depression. If you're going to have one or the other, have sadness and not depression, because sadness is a state of mind. Depression is a chemical imbalance. It's two very different things. And I can attest to that completely. So obviously I do talk quite openly about my mental health and my bipolar and extreme mood swings, and sadness is a completely different thing. I've been diagnosed with depression, misdiagnosed, because it was bipolar. So antidepressants didn't work. The worst thing to give to somebody with bipolar is antidepressants. It's completely the wrong chemical to put in a body that needs something else. And I agree with what he was saying about that. You can't treat sadness, but you can. You can help with depression, but if you're sad, you're sad. I know that sounds bonkers, and I don't know whether that makes sense to anyone, but I think sadness is very different to depression, and the same as an introvert and extrovert. So I'm the most introverted extrovert you're ever going to meet in your life. I am both, but they're both very different things, and I think we put a lot of emphasis on, well, you need to be like this. You can't be both, but you can.
Well, indeed, in that very example, you talked about even our reactions as people on the other end are the same. If someone said or expressed out loud, I feel depressed or I feel sad, you mentioned the default action is, we're going out for a drink. You're depressed? You got nothing to be depressed about. Let's go out for a drink.
Yeah, or snap out of it.
Snap out of it. In that very action that means well, we're trying to, as you said, snap them out of the state, flip the state, that kind of thing. That can actually cause more harm than you might think, because you're subconsciously giving them the message that you might even feel what you feel right now, so sadness or anxiety or depression. But I'm telling you through the words I'm saying and subconsciously that it's not acceptable to feel like you do. The snap out of it. You've got nothing to be depressed about. So ergo, it's not acceptable to feel depressed. So now you're not feeling good enough for two reasons. You're depressed and it's not acceptable to be depressed. So you're feeling depressed about it not being acceptable to be depressed. So you're compounding it. Again, unwittingly, we're not going around blaming everybody here. But when we say snap out of it, we're more adding to it than we might think.
When I think when we spoke last time, we talked a little bit about a conversation that I'd recently had with my mum and dad, where I'd kind of apologized to them for, not giving them that trust. But during that conversation, my dad said to me, he said, to be honest, if you'd told me 10 years ago, I'd just told you to snap out of it. And he probably would have. But he was really open about that, because he said depression. My dad said, depression? What the fuck is depression? I was like, do you know what I mean? Just get your head together. And obviously it's completely different now, and it's a whole new level of understanding. But I think that's something that's happened through time. I think, I my granddad went missing during the war, and when they found him, he was in France, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think it's France. They found him in a hospital in France, and he'd got shell shock, because that's what they used to call
Oh
PTSD,
yeah,
like
yeah,
in the
yeah,
war.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shell shock. So he'd got shell shock, and he was really quite poorly. So shell shock was acceptable after people came out of the war because they had a reason for it to have affected them. But no one really understood depression as a chemical imbalance. It was just kind of like, well, snap out of it. And I think it's only been in the last probably 5 to 10 years, and not even solidly, it's probably only been in the last 2 years, as
Yeah.
somebody that suffers really badly with their mental health, that people have actually started to show a different kind of patience and understanding for people with mental health. Because I think before that, it was always just fobbed off as snap out of it. And like Jimmy Carr says, you wouldn't tell somebody with cancer to snap out of it. And that it's equally, and it's something that makes you poorly. It's something that you've got
Yeah.
no control over. It isn't something that you choose. I know for a fact that every single person that I know that's got bipolar, mental health issues, depression, would give anything to just snap out of it. But we can't. It isn't that easy. And I think as you get older, there are lots of other factors that get thrown in with depression and bipolar, and
Yeah.
with the hormone changes, and and all these kind of things that don't make it any easier.
It compounds, doesn't it? Because it
Yeah.
starts from that state and it compounds stuff. And it actually reminds me of something again that came across my network recently. Of my coach discussed the phrase like to be brutally honest, and he goes, "It's interesting we stick the word brutally in there. Like, why have we got to be brutally honest? Where's the brutality coming into it? What are we looking to harm the other person, hurt them? And it's, I guess, labelled as like we're trying to spur them into action, or again that sort of snap out of it element. But it's like, well, if we, yeah, on the one hand, if we did just be honest all the time, like we get told as a child, be honest and tell the truth and all this kind of thing. Yet we counterintuitively see other examples of like, well, you just lied, or that was acceptable. Do you know what I mean? It's not as straightforward as that. But when it came to the whole be honest, like if we just said what we wanted to all the time, we'd probably cause more harm to ourselves and others than we might readily think. But on the other side, if we're just saying, "Oh, be brutally honest," you're like, well, why can't we be compassionately honest? Not in a hippie, everybody peace and love everything. It's like, well, why the brutality? Then I've thought of phrases like, well, yeah, you hear to be brutally honest, then you hear, oh, it's tough love. Again, I'm not trying to judge parents here or anything like that, because I'm not one for a start, but it's just little things where you see, like, if a child is crying and then the parents are like, oh, no, leave him, it's tough love, they've got to snap out of it, or they'll cry it out and this kind of thing. Okay, that's your thing, but I just look at it and go, what's the message they're subliminally getting? That no one's there to support you, no one's there, and you get those feelings of like, I have to go through this shit alone. And you're like, well, why has it got to be like that? Why can't we have that compassion? And with everything that we, I certainly talk about, is like, in the sort of the self-development space, it's about the balance. We're not saying pick them up all the time and mollycoddle them. No. But it's that balance of like, I just translate it to now as adults. When we feel alone and hurt and depressed, and we feel nobody wants to listen to us, nobody wants to talk to me, nobody wants to connect, where does it hark back to? Well, there were instances when it was this whole tough love thing, and then you create that shell yourself. You might be one that people might find it hard to sort of get on with you, or your heart, it's mistaken for shyness that you might not be readily talking. So it's like you said, it compounds upon things. But if we just approach it from like snap out of it, and that's forget that and that kind of thing, you're like, well, great. It's not. I don't just switch it off like a light switch and that's it.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It is. And he then obviously he goes on talking about sadness, depression, anxiety, depression, and it goes on to talk about suicide being a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And obviously, as you know, I've lost a few people in the last 5 years to suicide. 2 really close friends, one of my best friends, and 2 really close friends. And he talks about suicide being a byproduct of depression, and it's actually a part of depression. Like suicide is a symptom of an out of control mind.
Yeah.
And that resonated greatly. What was he said about bungee? He said something about bungee.
It feels like it was like suicide on a bungee rope.
Yeah, like it was like bouncing back up again, and that was quite. It's not. I think it in the back of my mind. I feel like it's a term that I've heard before, but I just really liked how he explained it. I really liked the way that he like he broke that down, and I think that he felt quite passionate about suicide being a byproduct of depression and mental illness rather than it being. I mean,
A
I
separate
stopped.
standalone thing.
Yeah, I stopped saying that my friend killed herself. I stopped saying that after my first really close friend died, and started saying that she died by suicide, because I don't think it was a decision. I don't think it's ever a decision that's made in the right frame of mind. I don't think there is ever a situation where I wouldn't bet that pretty much everybody at that last moment has that second of shit, what have I done, and then it's too late. I think it's a symptom of a much deeper issue that people feel that there's just no way out of, and that's, I think a lot of that is down to, not a lot of it, that's probably wrong, but I think a massive amount of it is down to that era of time where it was a case of snap out of it. Do you know what I mean? Just
Agree.
like,
I wanted to ask, actually, you mentioned that like when you had the conversation with your folks about, and your dad in particular said, if you'd told me X years ago, I
yeah.
would have just said snap out of it. Did he share with you what changed from that moment to the point you told them, where they could like, I guess, process it more or have a different understanding or perspective?
Yeah, so I told my mum and dad that about my mental health and what I'd been struggling with over the years. It was when Prince William and Prince Harry did that documentary called Mind Over Marathon.
Oh, right,
And
okay.
I think it was a whole week. It was a mental health awareness week, and it was 4 years ago, I think now. And they were talking really quite deeply about losing their mum and the effect it had on their mental health and their life in the public eye. And my mum and dad rang me, and they were working with, I think there were 6 or 8 people during this 5 days that they talked to quite a lot during the filming. And there were quite a lot of people there were people that were bipolar, struggling with their mental health. Anyway, I remember having a conversation with my mum and dad about them watching this documentary, and mum saying something along the lines of, a lot of what they're saying is kind of a bit like how you are. And I remember getting off the phone and ringing my friend and saying to her, if I don't tell them now, I'm never going to tell them.
This is an opportunity.
This is my window of opportunity, because they were really engrossed in this program. They were really like, for the first time ever, they were taken on board. So I told them, and they went and they went and applied for like literature to support how to support your children with mental health.
Wow.
They joined a couple of support groups, and they went out and found information out, and they went and researched and learned. In fact, it was really funny. I was having a bit of a breakdown one evening, and I thought, right, I'm going to give mum and dad a ring. So I rang mum and dad, like fighting back the tears, just really needed someone to talk to. Mum went, I can't talk to you right now. We're just watching a documentary about how to look after your children with mental health. We're really going to have to go. Bye. Put the phone down. And I was like, ironic but funny, and it's cheered me up. And we brought in lots of really effective ways. So when my mental health gets quite bad, I need time out. Like, my brain goes into overdrive, and I get really irritated by little things, and I just sometimes need to just take myself away from people. I'm very aware that when my energy's good, it's great, but I'm also very aware when my energy's not good, I
Right.
don't want to. I don't want to put myself around people when I feel like that, so I tend not to. But what would ultimately happen is, I sometimes, I at least once a week have one day where I completely time out from my phone, from everything. I need that break,
Yeah.
and I would have my mental health would be deteriorating. My mum messaging me 50 billion times a day, which I love, but when my mental health is great, I find really difficult. So what I do is I turn my phone off, and then I'd turn it off for a couple of days, and then I'd be too scared to turn it on again because I know that I've worried my mum and dad because I've been off the radar for a week.
Right. Right.
And then I wouldn't want to see anyone, so I'd close all my curtains, and then I would like just gradually hide out, only eat what I've got in the house. I don't want to see anybody. Just like planets to let the dogs out when I know no one's going to see me, and then like a couple of days have turned into a week and my phone's not been switched on. Now I'm really worried about turning my phone on because I know mum and dad would have been worried. And I also know by this point my mum and dad probably would have rang one of my friends that lives locally and asked them just to come and check that the house. It's been a whole roller coaster. So one of the first things that we put into place when we talked about my mental health was we chose a pineapple, and that if I was having a bad day in the morning, I would send my mum a picture of a pineapple. So my mum would know that I'm okay, but she knows that I just need some space, which then meant that she's not stressing, texting me, and I'm not replying. I'm then not turning my phone off because I can't deal with her. And I'm then not ending up my mental health days turning into weeks and weeks and months with my phone being switched off because I'm too scared, because I'm worried that I've worried everybody. So
That's
that
brilliant.
was, yeah, that was one of the first things that I put in place. And it was one of the most important things that I put in place for everybody, was to say that if I'm having a bad day and I can't cope with talking to you today, I'm just going to send you a picture of a pineapple, and you know that I'm awake, you know I'm up, you know I'm getting on with my day, but I can't deal with small talk today because my brain is like. And it was the biggest godsend for my relationship with my parents. It's been the best in the last 4 years since we put that into place than it has ever been. Just
All
one
thanks to
simple thing.
pineapple.
Oh yeah, just that one little thing has made the difference between me going off the radar for maybe 24 hours, 48 hours, to sometimes it'd be 6, 8 weeks, and I would turn my phone off, batten down the hatches, and just not leave the house.
Wow. I mean, that's a really powerful share. Thanks for that.
It is
It's
it's it's a little thing, but often especially when we struggle with our mental health, often what we do, as especially everyone, people that are involved, like yourself, your family members, whatever, everybody's so stuck in the middle of the situation that sometimes you don't often see the very simplest things that could make everybody's life a lot easier and a lot more comfortable. And I've overcome a lot of hurdles with my mental health, and mental health and menopause has not been an easy ride either. And I've, really importantly, and worked really, really, really hard to find ways to manage my mental health the best I possibly can in order to stay afloat and just to keep. And I knew that it was going to get harder as I got older. And I don't take any pharmaceuticals at all. I manage my mental health in other ways, but this has been the best that I've been, and I think it's a lot of small bits of a jigsaw puzzle that have all gradually fitted in. But it's taken me 40 years to get there. Well, it's taken me 25 years to find that decent balance and be all right with myself.
but what I'm hearing a lot from this are two aspects that surround it all. Is first of all, you've had the wherewithal to recognise, but no, first of all, accept what you're feeling, not bury them, not repress them, not suppress them. Pause and go, okay, what can help me here? So you recognise, you accept, and you go, right, you feel what you feel, and then, okay, what can I do here? So rather than continuing the pattern of shutting yourself down, which you need, which is natural, but then going, okay, but I might be worrying other people. I might, a day, as you say, an hour could turn to a day, to a week, and then you have other people worrying, etc. But when you're able to make a very simple action, as you say, it's not complicated. We've all got the means to do it, agree it. But and this is where the second point comes in. You had the people around you that listened to you and actually acted on it. I think that's superb. The fact that
Yeah.
you were able to tell your parents, who, again, I don't want to tar everybody with the same brush, but you know, I guess that generation did, as we said before, like they come from the snap out of it generation, or you know,
Yeah.
get on with it type thing. You know, roll your sleeves up, you know, move on, that kind of thing. Who might readily hear about what we share and go, what? You know, they might take some time to get it, but the fact that you folks were able to take that, hear what you had to say, and then act upon it by finding groups, listening to more material, understanding, going, right, how can we help our daughter? How can we, you know, educate ourselves? How can we better ourselves on
Yeah.
that?
And
I
that's
think
exactly what
I
they
think
did.
that's amazing. That's really
Yeah.
really cool.
It
And
is.
that came from you just sharing with each other. Now, it's not to say, look, that might happen all the time with everybody else, but I hope it encourages people to try and share, not tell the world about it, not in a, like a victim way or you know, a woe is me way. It's just trying to. I think if you do have someone that you can be honest with, whether that's a, you know, someone like a family member or a friend or a colleague, or even just like, you know, a someone on the end of a phone, like, you know, a Samaritan or whomever, just someone
Yeah.
that you can actually express out to. The actual act of expression probably helps you more than you might think. It might necessarily solve everything, but it's the first step towards, right, okay, the kind of similar journey you went through, the acceptance, the recognizing, and the right, okay, now what can I do? And if that takes a little bit of time, that's okay. It's not meant to
Yeah.
be overnight. You're meant to
Absolutely.
just instantly switch on and go, great, you know, I've told everybody, now everybody needs to help me out here, and that's it. It's like, no. This will be an ongoing journey with ups and downs, like with anything. Like, you still make mistakes. You'll still do the same behaviour. You might go, fucking hell, where's that come from again? That's all okay. It's all part of the mix.
Yeah.
But the fact that you were able to get that support, I think, is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I do appreciate that there are a lot of people out there that are completely suffering in silence, and I think we convince ourselves that no one's really going to get it.
That's it.
Um, we do. We absolutely do. And I think this is why I'm really keen to talk about my mental health and be really open and honest about it, and talk about the fact that for 20 odd years, I very, very, very much kept it to myself. I think my mum and dad were just relieved I wasn't an arsehole. Okay, she's not an arsehole. She's mentally unstable. We can get behind that. Do you know what I mean? I am not implying that everybody with mental health issues, people look at them if they've not told anybody and say you're an arsehole. But without question, mental health issues do come across in the wrong way
Yeah.
if you don't, if you're, you know, unable to, if you don't have support and you're unable to manage your emotions, because 9 times out of 10 massive outbursts with mental health come purely out of your own frustration and lack of, you know, your own personal understanding. And I kind of do regret not telling my mum and dad, but in a way, the benefits of telling them when I did and how that has positively impacted us is something that I'm really proud of. And I don't know how different things would have been if I'd have told them earlier. I don't know whether it would have been met with the same level of understanding that it was. And in my dad's own admissions, it probably wouldn't have been. And you know, I think, so what? I might have spent a really long time dealing with it on my own, but what that gives me is a really unique offering to show other people that that is okay if that's how you're choosing to deal with it. But I can tell you that it is better if you get it out there and actually start talking to people.
Absolutely. And look, that comes at a different pace for different people.
Of
You know,
course.
it's not necessarily, you know, at the end of this podcast, go and speak to somebody. That might work for a lot of people, great. But if it takes a little bit of time for you to listen to this, absorb it, and go, okay. All that I ever talk about with a lot of what I do now is just like, it's just opening your possibilities.
Yeah.
Some people might have come along going, as you said, there's no hope for me. As like, I'm the only person going through this. I've probably said this before on this show again, where like we have more commonality in terms of like our issues, challenges, problems than we might think. Often we have the same challenges, but we just live in different houses.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that it is only you that has ever experienced this kind of thing. It might feel like that, and again, that is okay to feel, as with anything. But then it can be up to you. Go, okay, do I sort of just like go, okay, that's just it. What can I do? And just shrug, or like, okay, what can I do with this? You know, we're
Yeah.
not looking to destroy anything. We're not looking to overcome or fight anything, because that's when it becomes more ego driven. That's when it might come more, you know, as you said, like, oh God, I'm going to lose this battle and things like that. But we can just go, okay, how can I work with it? This might be a sign that, like, okay, do I need to process something? Do I need to understand myself more about something? Do I need to, you know, what can I do with this thing? Because everything that we have is a manifestation and a gathering of everything we've gone through so far, that's gone through our systems. We opened this podcast with the idea of we're unreliable narrators, but we made the stories. We make
Yeah.
the stories.
Of course we do.
So with all that, they all go through our belief system, our senses, our everything to form, you know, your own perspectives and judgments. And guess what? That then impinges and interlinks with your self-worth.
Yeah,
I've
of
talked
course it
about
does.
self-worth being depicted on a health bar from a video game. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, pick whichever one you want. Every time we make that judgment, our self-worth bar gets chipped down a bit. So, you know, we're like the medipacks
Yeah.
and the secret spells or whatever you had to restore your health in the game. That's what we're looking to try and do here. I'm just conscious of time, so I just want to move on to a topic they spoke towards the end of the podcast of...
Wait, before you move on, can you just hold
Oh,
that
yeah.
thought just for a second? Before you move
Yeah.
on, just because I just want to say quickly that we have been talking about suicide, so we'll pop a link
sure.
in,
Yeah.
right, for a suicide helpline. Just if anybody is feeling a bit like that, there are people out there that can help. So I just want to say that we will pop a link in to Samaritans and maybe a couple of others. There's Ripple Suicide Prevention, and there's a lot of help out there. So yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, great shout. And I would
Yeah.
just echo that by saying, look, it might feel that you're on your own, but in at least the two of us, you're not in that regard. So, you know, if you want us to share, if you want to share some space with us, you're completely happy to do so. As you say, there might be more people that, you know, you might feel more comfortable to, or another perspective, and in which case, you know, that's the point of the helpline. But just know that, you know, you aren't on your own. I know there's, to be honest, there are a lot of social media messages that might portray the same thing, but I think that everybody ultimately, we're all trying to come from a good place of trying to do a little bit of goodness, a little bit of kindness. That's all it is, because that's ultimately, you know, something we can all do, like, for free. You know, at the end of the day, I always say I've got big ears, so, you know, that's maybe what they're meant to be there for, to listen. So no, great shout for that. You know, do reach out if you want those that space. So yeah, towards the end of the podcast, they introduced the scope and idea of NLP.
Loved it.
I'm really keen on. I think you're a big fan too. And you know, just seeing the dialogue between two, of someone who's looked into it, delved into it, and Stephen going, well, what is it? And I like the way Jimmy just in 2 sentences phrased it. Well, first of all, it's like a belief system for life, and then he introduced one of the key principles of the map is not the territory.
Yeah.
So for those of you unfamiliar, the idea of the map is not the territory is the idea that, say you were exploring a geographical location. Say, I think they used England and France as like the obvious examples, right? When it comes to borders that we look at on a globe or an atlas or a map or whatever, and you've got the lines in saying that's a line between England and France or wherever you want to say it, we don't see them when you go out in the real world. Similar to, say, if you explored London, that's not all of England. That's just London itself. So basically what you know isn't everything there is to know, i.e. your map that you create. So you create your own map, isn't the territory. It's the idea that you can change your perspectives, not for the sake of changing, but the fact that they are malleable. Brought me back to a very key lesson that I learned in my space of coaching. Of we engage in a lot of things like ego battles to prove that we're right. I'm right about this, whatever it might be. You know, an argument, a fight, a debate, whatever, with whomever about whatever. It can be something as trite or as serious as you want. But both of them are ego-driven, going, you know, I'm going to win. None of you gets anything. You don't get a pot of money or a holiday at the end of it. But it's just that ego pumping of like, yeah, see, I proved them, you know. And then on the other side, if you lose the argument, you're like, well, okay, am I an idiot? Do I need to revisit everything I know? Are they actually right? You know, and you cast those questions on yourself. But a little tip for everybody: if you just use the words with practice, the words, maybe you're right, in one of these battles. See what happens. Not from the very beginning. Not like, they open an argument and you go, yeah, maybe you're right. You can get to that level, but when you use those words, maybe you're right, it does two things. First of all, the other person goes, what? Because what they're looking for is that pushback from you so that they can push back even further. The disagreement or the, no, you're wrong. And like, no. The moment they want to jump in and go, wait, and then jump in with their argument. But when basically in this instance, and well, I know audially this doesn't look good, but what I'm doing is I'm bumping two fists together for those of you on audio. When you say maybe you're right, you basically drop your fist, and the other person suddenly goes, wait, where have you gone? They've got no fist to bump back against. But where you come from is not the whole smug and I'm better than you perspective. It's the whole, look, I'm comfortable enough in my opinion that this is what it is at the moment, but I can also go, okay, I can listen to you and go, actually, they might be right about what you're talking about. So you can go, okay, is there scope that I can change my opinion accordingly? Does it still sit with my values? I'm not having to agree to something completely weird or radical. But basically, you just get into less fights. So you might begin the symptom of like, I get into fights all the time. I'm argumentative. I'm agitated. I'm angry. All these things are like, I need, and then people say, oh, you need anger management. Or you need to chill out. Fuck off. Stress.
No one chilled out by being told to chill out ever.
Exactly. Just fuck off. Or fuck me. Or that phrase. Take a chill pill. I'll stick that pill up with some of you fucking. Anyway, it's just the idea that you can just give yourself the idea of no, or take less ego battles. Just from saying, do you know what? Maybe you're right.
Maybe you're right. Do you know? I think I have another saying that's kind of similar but different, and it is not my circus, not my monkeys. Like
I like it. I like it.
My monkeys play trombones. Yours don't. Not my. I think I always go. I'm terrible with sayings. I don't know why they stick in my brain and I don't remember them right, and I'll probably make them funnier. But there's like, that thing about arguing with an idiot. There's a saying about arguing with an idiot, and if an idiot tells you 2 and 2 is 5, all right, yeah, it's enough to go. I think I'm at that point in my life where I don't really need to I don't feel like I really need to overly debate my opinion to anyone about anything anymore. I genuinely don't. I think a difference of opinion is healthy. I think probably my recent the coaching masters training has taught me a lot about this. I've always been pretty chilled anyway. I've always been very much like, well, that's your opinion and this is my opinion, and we're obviously not going to agree. So let's agree to disagree and respect each other's opinions. And let's, if you're going to get irate when you want to talk to me about it, maybe we shouldn't talk about it because I'm not getting irate, kind of thing. And that's kind of, just let it be, whatever. Okay, brilliant. That's your opinion. I respect that. I don't agree, but I respect it. And I've been like that for a really long time. I've been lucky enough to discover that quite early on, because my mental health, my bipolar brain, and my weirdness mean that it's been a very long time since I've really found anyone that agrees with, some of my wildest ideas. But equally, I like that because that's what makes me me. So I have for a very long time stopped butting heads with anybody about anything that anybody thinks. I much prefer the intellectual conversation about why our opinions are different than I ever would enjoy everybody agreeing with me. I think, it's an important part of life. But like you were saying, massive arguments about anything that is opinion related is very ego based, simply.
And I think we engage in more of those again than we might readily think. But we don't look beyond that symptom. I get into fights with my partner. I get into disagreements with my colleagues. My kids wind me up and this kind of thing. And look, all these situations are completely natural and are okay. But when we can put another perspective on it, going, okay, what's my part in this? And it's, again, not to say you take the blame for everything or you take responsibility for other people. You go, okay, what part am I driving this, and what can I change from my perspective to make my life more agreeable, better? As I said to people, like, if you just practice that, and it is just practice, and not just drop it in every now and again. the best lesson I learned from it, or the best practical example I had from it was coming up to 2 years now. I was at a cousin's and we were talking about I think dating or married life or relationships or something like that. And I'm the only singleton in the group, and there are there's couples in there without kids, there's couples in there with kids, and everyone was talking and all this kind of thing. And the talk was all about it was thinly veiled of like what single people should do. Oh, you should do this, you can't do that all the time. You should, and it was very much like I don't think it was directed at me, but I could feel like okay, but I myself felt myself getting wound up, going
Right.
yeah, and it's like I could feel it, and the old me might have jumped in, counter arguing or counteracting, and again it would turn into, and then I know that there are people clever enough in there to turn it into a kind of ego battle or a wind up situation. Okay, how much further can we wind me up and this kind of thing? But instinctively, out of nowhere, I went, why don't you just drop in, maybe you're right? I wasn't interacting much in the conversation, but I might have questioned people saying that. I'm saying, I'm not so sure of that. And again, people would just come back and say, no, you got to do that, mate, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. And like, okay. So when I just dropped in, maybe you're right. Just at the point where I was about to sort of go over the top.
Lose your shit.
Lose my shit, probably. And wound myself up afterwards going, fucking hell, I dropped it again. When I just said, yeah, maybe you're right. Like that, literally just kind of, yeah, maybe you're right. 2, 3, just, it's as if I've just switched them off. Like
yeah,
a,
so
like a
it's
robot.
like just
It's
like a pail
Yeah.
of water over a fire. Gone.
Yeah. Again,
like
it's not to mean to say I won or I'm better than them or I'm more, in a better state than them. Nothing like that. But it's like, for me, this would have been better to go, I don't need to engage in ego battle. I can hear what they're saying. I can understand their words. I can understand their perspective. Again, like you were saying, I might not agree with their perspective, but I don't need to counteract my opinion, therefore dangle my self-worth in that argument, going, shit, if I don't stand up for my points here, everything that I know is going to be destabled. It's like, maybe you're right. Dead simple, but see how effective it can be for people.
Yeah.
I'm just conscious of the hour wrapping up, but there's a couple of more points I just wanted to run through because I think it was really nicely put. At the end, Stephen Bartlett asked Jimmy, like, how would you phrase, I guess, what life is about, the meaning of life type thing, sort of a very wide question. And then Jimmy said in 5 words, he said, enjoying the passage of time.
Yeah.
Which I really liked, of like, we worry about what may have gone on, what's going to happen, and this kind of thing. But the phrasing when he said, just enjoying the passage of time, what that means to you. And you hark back to what you were saying earlier in the episode of when you can find something you can lock in, get into a flow state over, and that's different. Go for that as much as you can.
That's your thing, yeah.
Yeah, and then the last question that you wrapped up with was from the previous guest.
Are you happy?
Such a simple question. Let me ask you that, Angie. Are you happy? Before he said what Jimmy said.
Yeah, I think as a whole, I am. I do have this conversation. You've got to really catch me. I think I think probably 95% of the time, I am absolutely really happy. But there's 5% of the time. And you know what generally is always over money? And it's not, it isn't because, oh shit, I can't afford to pay my bills. It's more like, I wish, because I've got to live on my own. I've got 2 free-loading dogs. I've got
freeloading dogs.
Well, they do. They wander around my house like they're hard done by. They cost me more a month than anything else. I've got 2 freeloading fish over there that just spend my money willy-nilly. I think for me, every now and again, the thing that really gets on top of me is I would just really love every now and again for someone just to pick up the slack. Do you know what? I'll cover the bills this month, or I'll do the food shopping, or I just every now and again, and it probably happens maybe, it's like a quarterly thing. it's my quarterly. I'm fed up with living on my own. Literally, it is quarterly. I reckon I have 4 little mini meltdowns a year, bi-quarterly, quarterly, definitely quarterly, and usually just before I'm due to come on my period. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'll have this massive meltdown, and I'll ring my best friend whilst I don't eat chocolate, by the way, while consuming like a giant dairy milk. And I'm fed up of me only paying my bills, and it's really shit, and I fucking hate it, and I wish somebody had just walked the dogs for me. Blah, 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 blah. And then the next day I'm fine and I'm over it. So yeah, I think I'm incredibly lucky. Do I wish that I went out more? Yes, but I'm working on that. It's one of my things that I'm working on. But I think in general, I don't have a great, I'm other than my mind, which I'm fine with. I'm relatively healthy. My parents are healthy, and my friends and family are amazing, and I've got 2 beautiful freeloading dogs and fish. I don't know, call them beautiful. So yeah, I think in general I am. Yeah, I'm all right. What about you? Are you happy?
Yeah. Is everything perfect? No.
No.
But to be honest, I think how Jimmy said it was a good way to say it, actually. If you're not, know that that's okay.
Yeah.
There are
Cool.
times when you're not, when you're like, whatever reason, it could strike at any moment. It could be a lingering thing. It could be a funk. It could be a whatever, and you're not happy. And you can ask yourself why and what can I do and this kind of thing. I've said this to 2, 3 people recently, and I think for me it's just a reaffirmation for myself that I retain hope. I'm a hopeful person in general about whatever it might be, and I've honed it down to, for me in life it's about relationships. That I find that sort of area of challenge, if you will, when it comes to happiness. But yeah, as I said, I know I'm not I'm a good person.
Yeah.
And I retain that hope. But when he said, like, if you're not, know that that's okay. You're like, yeah, and as I said before, it's like it's all part of the mix that we're creating. We always have an opportunity to look into our possibilities, and even in that instance where it might not feel like it or we don't want to, even that's okay. Sometimes
Yeah.
our systems want to just process stuff in its own space without us having to nitpick or micromanage or whatever. But a lot of the time we just give ourselves signals saying, no, I've got to do something, I've got to get on with it, I've got to move on, sometimes your system goes, fuck off.
Yeah.
I just need to
agree. I mean,
process whatever I've going on.
If you'd have asked me the same question at the wrong time in the quarter, and you know what I mean, that particular morning, you'd have got a different answer. I think it's subjective as well to what's going on in your life. There's
For sure. I just like the way he summed it up, saying if you're not happy, that's okay. It struck to me if like you don't have to forcibly, move on or flip the emotion or deny it. It's fine. But the truth is, there's no one we know that is always happy.
No.
Unless you're Mr. Happy, but then Mr. Men don't actually exist. But
yeah, I think that it would be really shit if we were happy all the time.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't think I'd be happy with that. I think that there has to be a balance. And it's really fucking cliche, but you can't have rainbows without the rain. It's so bad. I hate it. And you know what? I've got quite a few sayings tattooed on me. So my friend, a really good friend of mine, she took her own life 5 years ago. I've got her motto was, "We're here for a good time, not a long time." So I've got that tattooed on my leg. And then my other friend who took her own life this year, hers was always, "Whatever doesn't kill us makes us weird at parties." So I have that tattooed on me as well. And
very good.
Yeah, and my personal favourite is "Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass; it's learning to dance in the rain." And
that's
you know what? It's a really common one, but I do love it. And I do love going out in the rain. I'm not going to lie, I'm a puddle jumper, me, all over that.
Brilliant,
all over it.
Brilliant.
Right, so we're going to wrap this
Our
up
hour
now.
is hour is up again.
Gone. What is it we're saying about finding something that you enjoy doing, and if the time goes and you don't even realize it? I think I love podcasting, honestly. I'm just going to reiterate one more time, because obviously, and we should maybe put a bit of a disclaimer at the
Yeah,
beginning,
for sure.
just to say that there might be some triggering topics
Yeah.
in this podcast. So, guys, there are some contact links below for mental health and stuff. And if anything is sort of touched on a little bit and you fancy reaching out, we're both here. And my choice next week.
It is.
I've
You
not
got one
one
ready?
yet. No.
Oh, well, there we go. We'll all have
No.
to tune in next week to see what's going on.
Yeah, I've got no idea. But thank you for this one. I have definitely saved it to my favourites. It has been saved, and thank you for sending it to me. I've listened to it 3 times. Normally, I try and do at least 3 times on a new podcast. So, but yeah, and I don't normally watch them. I've been watching them as well because I think you get a little bit extra out of watching them than just listening to them.
Very much so. Yeah. It engrosses you more. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it watching or listening. This is the Podcast Echo, and we'll catch you on the next one.